Welcome to the Friday edition of the Section 1904 podcast. I have confirmed that Darren Smith is still alive in Cancun, Mexico. He did like one of my text messages this morning, but I told him to either throw his phone in the ocean or do what he promised to do, which is lock it in a safe for the next 2 days. So Darren Smith will not be a part of this podcast today, drunk or sober. Joining me today, a man that I have not gotten to talk to on a podcast in a while, but you've probably heard his voice. I heard him on The Kept Faith a couple days ago. I heard him on Ben and Woods, I feel like last week, or maybe that was earlier this week. What is time? Yesterday basically melted my brain into something that barely understands where I am or who I am. But Dylan from Letters to AJ is here, and he is going to help me sort out what the post-trade deadline San Diego Padres look like and what we can expect from them. Dylan, I'm going to ask you to play the role of Mike Shildt several times today, and my apologies for that. But right. I have to start here. So I did a long recap of the trade deadline yesterday. I wrote a bunch of blog posts, one for like every single trade that the Padres made. And you know what? I woke up this morning. Last night I was doing this thing. They traded away 14 guys. They got back 7. 14 guys. They got back 7. And then as I was putting together the newsletter this morning, I saw someone say that there was 22 players involved total. And I was like, 14 plus 7 is 21. Did I miss somebody? And the answer is yes. So this is me cleaning that up. In return for Brandon Lockridge, not only did the Padres get an injured Nestor Cortez Jr., they also got an 18-year-old shortstop prospect named Jorge Quintana, who... I'm gonna be honest. He looks interesting. He looks interesting, and you can get real mad about them trading away Leo DeVries, but Quintana looks interesting, and I'm not that mad about this. Actually, the more time I spent thinking about what the Padres did before the trade deadline yesterday, the more excited I got. And this is where my brain was summing it up. The Padres, who, before the trade deadline, if you got with a cranky Padres fan, they would tell you AJ Preller doesn't know how to construct a roster, and this team is too top heavy. This team is no longer top heavy.
No.
This team has probably 1 to 2 more starting pitchers than they have spots in the rotation. They probably have 1 more guy in the bullpen than they kind of have room for. These are good problems. And they have 1 to 2 guys that you would have thought would be starting players in the lineup that are probably now riding the bench. In addition to that, in terms of not being top heavy, I did this research. Dylan, can you figure out off the top of your head? I bet you can. Assume that the 9 starters are the 9 starters that we think they're going to be. Fermin, Arráez, Cronenworth, Bogarts, Machado, Laureano, Merrill, Tatis, and O'Hearn as the DH. How many starting spots do you think the Padres have that they are filling with a guy who has made an all-star team in the last 3 years?
Oh, my.
Almost
everyone.
Almost everyone. 7 of 9. And as a matter of fact, I could make an argument. Now, granted, I'm looking at his end-of-year stats. I could make an argument that Laureano probably should have made one because his stats appear like they were probably good enough.
Yeah.
But he never made one.
Right.
And Freddy Fermin never made one. But Arráez was there in 2024, as was Jackson Merrill. Jake Cronenworth and Xander Bogaerts were all-stars in 2022. And Machado and Tatis and O'Hearn were all all-stars this year. In the bullpen, Suarez, Adam, Morjon, we know they were all all-stars this year. Mason Miller, who they added, was an all-star last year. Funny enough, the starting rotation, can you guess who in the starting rotation has made it to an all-star team, like, ever?
Darvish.
He's the only one. Which is
that is interesting.
It's kind of mind-blowing that like Dylan Cease never made one. Michael King didn't make one. I mean, I didn't look at Musgrove. Musgrove probably made one, but I'm not counting him for this year. So Darvish is the only one in the starting rotation who's been to an all-star game. But this is not dissimilar from a freaking all-star team at this point.
It's not.
And that that deserves a lot of praise. AJ Preller deserves a lot of praise. Now, say what you will about giving up all the prospects. I don't care. Some people do. I'm going to be releasing a podcast either later today or tomorrow with a Padres fan who's very upset about how little AJ Preller cares about prospects. But this is basically an all-star team now that they've built. And even with that starting lineup I gave you, they have Diaz, who was a starter yesterday on the bench. They have Bryce Johnson, who was a starter yesterday, hitting, I don't know, about 300 off the bench. And they have Gavin Sheets, who probably got some votes to make the all-star team this year on the bench, I think. So this is my first question for you. You're Mike Shildt. Do you do a left field platoon with Laureano and Sheets? Because I was reading your Letters to AJ Substack post this morning, and you were going through Laureano, and it was a lot of stuff that I knew, and the videos were very nice. It's nice to watch videos of him hitting home runs. But you mentioned that he's not great against good right-handed pitching. And I think they got pretty comfortable with Sheets in left field. And also, there's really no reason to platoon Sheets and O'Hearn at DH because they're both lefties. So I imagine they're going to look for reasons to get Sheets in the lineup. Again, playing first base is Arráez. He's also a lefty. The only place I can see Sheets getting in the lineup is if they do a bit of a platoon between Laureano and Gavin Sheets in left field. Do you think I'm crazy? Am I giving Sheets too much credit? Is he just a bench player because the rest of the team got so much better?
No, that's what I expect. Laureano this season has been phenomenal against right-handers, but in his career, he has a more typical-looking profile where he has a bit of an edge against lefties. But he does profile as an everyday player with the way that he has played this year. And it was encouraging to me to see that there has been an approach change this year that seems to have unlocked these physical tools that he's always had. But despite the platoon splits actually looking better against righties this year, the theory of the player is probably that when you get up into those really, power right arms, he'll have some of the same disadvantages that typically accrue to same side platoon matchups. And yeah, Sheets has played well enough to give him some time in a platoon in left field. And I do think stacking the lineup in that way against good right-handed pitching is a way to get an incremental edge. And what that gives you is something this team hasn't had all season was, thump off the bench, a real legitimate chance to insert a hitter that, as you mentioned, has been playing like an all-star into whatever at bat happens to be important and high leverage later in the game. So I definitely expect to see some platoon lineups between those two.
Me too. I think Mike Shildt's job, while it got easier because he got a lot more talent, also got more complicated. And so that's the first complication, which is there's first base, there's left field, there's DH, and Arráez and O'Hearn and Sheets are three guys trying to fill two spots if you assume Laureano's the everyday guy. And that's why I'm no, I think it's got to be four guys to fill three spots. But it's still I don't know. There's going to be guys not playing every day that want to be playing every day. And that's fine. You're going to have the same thing in the bullpen. You now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 absolutely nails relief pitchers who could probably be closers if they really wanted to and might get a chance at some point in Suarez, now Mason Miller, Jason Adam, Adrian Morejon, and also Jeremiah Estrada. And you're not going to have an opportunity to pitch 5 guys out of the bullpen every night. And that's fine because these guys have been pitching every night and probably getting a little worn out. And now you can kind of rotate guys through and give guys a night off. And that'll be good. And even in Mason Miller, who's closed so often, you have a guy who can give Suarez a breather if he's pitched 2 nights in a row and you need him for a 3rd night or something like that. I'm going to pause there because it seems like you have thoughts on the bullpen.
Well, I think, what you were just getting at, it's good to consider that on both sides of the ball, because what I wonder is this a lineup where you can give some of the Fernando Tatis's, Jackson Merrills of the world a night off here and there now, and you're not cratering your offense? And we don't think about position players as needing time off as much. But it probably helps from time to time to give, these athletes a breather and not necessarily, again, a complete day off. It's quite a luxury to be able to pinch hit Jackson Merrill or Fernando Tatis late in a game. I would speculate they'll get a couple days off down the stretch.
Okay, maybe. Depends on how close the NL West is, right? The other thing is,
I think by a couple, I might literally mean like at most 2.
Yeah. The Padres have played 109 baseball games. They play their 110th baseball game tonight. Not surprisingly, appearing in all 109 baseball games is Manny Machado. Somewhat surprisingly, the Padres have 2 guys in their starting lineup who have played 107 games and 2 guys that have played 103. Would you like to take guesses, or do you already know this?
Well, I would guess it's Luis Arráez in the 103 range.
Yep, Luis Arráez is one of the 103 guys.
And then I think Merrill missed more time than that.
Merrill has played 76 games. Jackson Merrill has played.
Oh. And I know that Cronenworth missed that time with the broken rib.
84.
Yeah. So it's Xander Bogaerts.
Okay, so Xander Bogaerts is a 107 guy. I'll give you the other 103 because we were just talking about him. It's Gavin Sheets.
That's surprising.
But the Tatis has been in 107 games so far out of 110. And I have been wanting to talk about this for a while because when in like 2019, 2020, I remember hearing from my sources that the Padres were kind of asking Machado to take a mentor-like role with Tatis. And it wasn't because they thought Tatis was immature, but they were like, we want to hammer it into his head that in the regular season, if you can play 150 plus games at 85% effort and be healthy and ready for the playoffs where you can ramp it up to 100%, that's the perfect scenario. What we don't need is you giving 100% every single night and playing 90 games because you've blown out your shoulder or you hurt yourself doing this, whatever. And that's been Machado's MO, right? People are like, oh, he doesn't give 100%.
Absolutely.
But he's out there every game, and he can also ramp it up a little bit for the big moments. And I think that's finally sinking in. I don't know if Machado has been, a mentor or anything to Tatis, but we were talking before I pressed record about that game in Pittsburgh where Tatis gets hit on the forearm, and he's got that huge knot on his forearm. And everyone's like, oh, God, how much time is he going to miss? He was in the lineup the next day.
Yep.
I think there was a game early in the season where he hurt his shoulder, like the subluxation shoulder thing. And we're like, oh, how much time? He was in the lineup the next day. And I don't think that was by accident. I think that was him walking in and telling Shildt, I want to be in the lineup today. I want to play. Don't give me a day off. I don't want a day off. I think he's turning into this Manny Machado-like player who is not giving you 100% every moment of every game, but is on pace to play 150 plus games this year. And that's, I know we'll get into the power. I do want to get into the power, but that's kind of what we always wanted from Fernando Tatis Jr. Like, be this player, but don't get hurt every 2 months. And that's what he's been this year. And I think that's been great. Before I move off, all the roster crunches, I want to talk about the starting rotation because I think there's a pretty obvious answer to how this is going to go, which is I think JP Sears is actually going to slide into the rotation for like a week until Michael King is healthy enough to come back. And then King will just take that spot and JP Sears will either become a swingman or get sent down to AAA or something.
Or an opener.
I did love your suggestion that he would work as a perfect opener for Dylan Cease. I love that suggestion. Until the Padres show me that they're willing to do interesting stuff like that, I'm not going to disappoint myself. Expectations of the thief of joy. I'm not going to disappoint myself by rooting for that. But,
probably wise.
Yeah, but I see your point. I agree with your point. I want to talk to you about Nestor Cortes. And I totally understand that I make no sense when it comes to players like this. Nestor Cortes, to me, is a lefty, less talented Johnny Cueto. And these are two pitchers that I absolutely love watching them pitch because they do all of these super goofy things, but not just to be goofy. Like, they literally frustrate hitters. They throw off timing. They're just a pain in the ass to hit against. And I think the Padres, I said this before the start of the season when it came to Kyle Hart, I think the Padres desperately, and if I'm being honest, I think Shildt is a part of this. I think they desperately want a lefty in the rotation. Desperately.
Yeah. Oh,
just to be able to give teams that different look and be like, your lefty masher can't be in the lineup this day, whatever. And that's why I think, like, okay, so Sears pitches, King comes back, Sears is gone. Cortes comes back. Let's assume Cortes is healthy in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. That's maybe, I don't think that's aggressive. That's kind of what we've been told. So let's say Nestor Cortes comes back in 2 or 3 weeks, and let's say at that point the rotation is Darvish, Cease, Pivetta, Vasquez, King. What do you do? Do you kick out Vasquez and put in Cortes because you want a lefty? Is that what you do? I think so, right?
So the big mystery with Strandy is it all just a ticking time bomb? Because his FIP suggests that he has been the luckiest pitcher in baseball.
He doesn't strike anyone out.
He doesn't strike anybody out. And the prevailing wisdom is that is not sustainable. So is he someone for whom, as good as some of his numbers look and as good as the team's record is in his starts, do you just take your winnings and go home?
Probably. Like, is that not the AJ Preller way of doing things, right? Like, I don't know if that's the Mike Shildt way of doing things, but is that not some people are up in arms about him trading away Leo DeVries and their top prospects. Yet again, he does it every year, trading away the top prospects. But isn't that taking your winnings and going home? You trade in this prospect that you've developed him and you've built him up and you've given him playing time in the minors and wow, you have this thing that could turn into something else. Or you could trade him for what he's worth today, take your winnings and go home and not risk having him come up and be a quadruple A player who can never, there is a world in which Leo DeVries could turn into Luis Campusano, right? Doesn't seem likely, but it's a possibility.
There always is, no matter the upside.
Yeah. So I think that's it. And I think if everyone stays healthy, oddly enough, we don't talk about this. I'm going to knock on all this wood right here. The Padres have been like really healthy this year outside of pitching. Like Michael King, Yu Darvish, and Joe Musgrove. That's a big part of the rotation. Like a year ago, that was like probably thought of to be like maybe 1, 2, 3 in the rotation. They've all missed significant chunks of time this year with injuries. But like, I don't think there's a single position player on the injured list for the Padres right now. And I don't think there has been for a little while. Maybe.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They got really out of sorts in, I think it was May, when they just had, all their bench pieces having to fill starts and not being able to.
That was the Cronenworth broken rib thing, right?
Positions to succeed. It was like, this was meaningful at the time. It was injuries to Lockridge and Hayward, which was the left field platoon, lest we forget. And then Cronenworth and Merrill all overlapping, and we had no depth whatsoever. But since then, yeah, it's been a slow progression back to full health, which is good. That's something that does really feel like it is out of the team's control. You have to keep the faith to some degree when it comes to those types of injury concerns.
Okay, so I want to rewind back because you said a thing in your trade recap post that is contrary to you agreeing with me here just a minute ago, which is you said you don't expect Nestor Cortes to be given any high leverage situations when he comes back. Would you have a problem with Nestor Cortes being put into the starting rotation and then relying on him? Because I don't think I do. Like the The argument against Nestor Cortes is his first start of the season against his former team, he got destroyed. But he had a start after that in which he was great, and he has a track record of like 5 years in which he's like basically an all-star level starter, right?
Yeah. Well, it can all come together. He had a rehab start that he actually went a significant distance into the game. He threw 5 2/3 innings just a week ago. And these are minor leaguers, but he struck out 9. He gave up 4 hits. He only walked 1. There's something there. Minor leaguers
I think he only got traded because they had a roster crunch. That's it. They've been so good without him that they're like, we're not going to screw up our rotation to bring him back in. We'll make him someone else's problem.
That's absolutely what it felt like. And he came with that prospect that we were talking about, and he came with cash.
I forgot about the cash.
So that's motivated selling. And when you look at their roster, they had a roster crunch. It was a move that they had to make. And that's not the same as, getting rid of someone because there's nothing left. There might be. And he is, as you said, a really crafty pitcher. He's a sneakily good athlete such that he can, perform those hijinks on the mound and still get into professional pitching mechanics at the last second.
Makes no sense.
And that plus being left-handed and still having, acceptable fastball velocity. Yeah, there could be something there. I think this is one where there's my expectation, but then I'm just going to sit back and trust that Niebla and the pitching lab know what they're doing. And if he gets high leverage innings, it's because there's a reason to think that he can be successful there. And so that trade was the most baffling of the day. It's still not making, perfect sense, but the theory of the trade is making more and more sense. And it's looking like maybe it wasn't just, give us some cash and a prospect. It's give us a cash and the prospect, but we'll take the pitcher too. We'll see what's left.
I actually think this deal was entirely about Nestor Cortes. And I think this is how I think this deal came together. And I could totally be just like thinking things through my own lens. But when I look at everything the Padres did yesterday, they only really traded away 2 guys that I would consider Major League Baseball players. And one of them was in AAA. Yes. And that's Ryan Berger and Stephen Kolek.
Yes.
As of right now, I know Ryan Berger has more potential than this, but as of right now, for the 2025 Padres, those 2 guys were back-end rotational starters, right?
Yes.
AJ Preller trades them away, gets back Freddy Fermin. We're going to talk about Freddy in a second for a lot of reasons. And I think there was that like voice in the back of AJ's head going like, if I do this and we face a couple of pitching injuries and I got to call on Matt Waldron to start 5 to 10 games in the final 2 months of the season, everyone's going to be like, man, you really screwed things up by trading away Berger and Kolek. Imagine how much better we'd be with Berger's 2-point-something ERA right now. And instead, he replaces both of them and does the thing that they've been trying to do all year, which is find a lefty for the rotation.
Yes.
They add Sears and they add Cortes, and it replaces Berger and it replaces Kolek as back of the rotation guys, and it gives them lefties that they can throw at people too. That being said, I think the Brewers probably called the Padres and said, what can we do to convince you to take Nestor Cortes? What would you give us for Nestor Cortes? And AJ was like, well, I don't really need Brandon Lockridge anymore because Bryce Johnson has proven himself to be kind of a better version of Brandon Lockridge at this point. I'll give you Brandon Lockridge. And the Brewers are like, fine, deal. And he's like, wait, I'm not done. I also need some cash because Nestor Cortes signed a 1 year, I think $7.5 million contract. And that means I got to pay him $2 to $3 million for the rest of the year. And I wasn't really planning on that. So you got to make that work out. And they're like, fine, cash. He's like, also Quintana. And they're like, damn it. Fine, because they know they needed to do it, right? They probably had 3 or 4 teams that they were talking to going like, what do we need to throw in with Nestor Cortes for you to take him? And that's how I think all of this worked. But at the end of the day, if you view Cortes and Sears as replacements for Berger and Kolek, and probably better replacements because they have more of a proven track record and they're left-handed. The major league team just got better in every way and didn't really get worse in any way.
Yeah.
The major league team gave up really nothing except maybe the future of Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek, if you believe in the future of Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek. So that's all amazing. I want to come back around to the guy that they got back for Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek, and that's Freddy Fermin, who yesterday I was calling Freddy Fermin. Apologies. Fermin. For anyone who is not yet, you can pause this podcast. It's fine. Pause it and go to Letters to AJ. Even if you don't want to read the whole long thing, read the Freddy Fermin section because it's all about bunting for the most part, and it's brilliant. And there's nothing that I love more. I don't want to say nice things about Yadier Molina on this podcast, but there's nothing that I love more than a really smart catcher. A really smart catcher who thinks like a damn manager, thinks like a coach on the field. Those guys are worth their weight in gold.
Yes.
And you convinced me that Freddy Fermin is that guy. So for anyone who hasn't read it and for anyone who is maybe illiterate or they're sitting in traffic and they don't want to pull up your Substack right now to read it, give me your couple-minute take on Freddy Fermin.
So first thing is he's never been a full-time starting catcher, and it looks like that is entirely because of circumstance. He's under Salvi over in Kansas City, legend. He was also under his tutelage, but he's a player that came up, made the majors at a little older age, was really, really productive in the minors to where his offensive profile was pretty tantalizing. He had his final half season in AAA, he hit 15 home runs with an 845 OPS. As a major leaguer, he hasn't had that degree of production, but he's been a very consistent hitter in a couple of ways. He's very aggressive. He swings when the ball's in the zone, and he's a tough out. He does not strike out a lot. In glimpses, he has deep ball power. He can hit it over 400 feet. He's more consistently going to be hitting line drives all over the field. Defensively, he seems to be a clear plus. He's got a good, not great arm, but outstanding pop times when he's trying to throw runners out. And that combination, I think, got him to something like a 44% caught stealing rate.
Wow.
In the past. And that's enough to control the run game. He's definitely an adequate framer, and anything above what we were getting from Maldonado is a clear plus. And then you just hear sterling things about his reputation and his makeup. And what I thought was really interesting is so many people were commenting on what a great bunter he is, which is just kind of, I don't know, what does that mean? Like he can get a sack bunt down? Okay. That's an archaic tool that we shouldn't be using anymore. So I looked at him as a player and I came across just some fascinating things about the way that he deploys bunts. And I think what I said is he's a smart bunter. He bunts in all the ways where bunting is actually still a big efficiency. And, contrary to popular belief, it is probably one of the biggest efficiencies in baseball when you deploy it correctly. So I dove in, and he has reached safely when he's attempted to bunt for a hit 11 out of 15 times. And that's not an accident because he's extremely selective when he does it. And he does it every time that I looked into these at-bats, it was the perfect circumstance to drop a bunt. It was leading off an inning. It was first pitch. It was close games where base runners are extremely important. And it was at-bats where the third baseman was playing in the outfield, basically. And when you watch his bunts, he has crisp mechanics. He gets the ball hard down the third base line, but not hit so hard that it's in the third baseman's glove. He basically forces the third baseman to make one of those, sprinting in, Matt Chapman, grab the ball, throw it off balance plays. And he's been fantastically successful with that. And when he has dropped a sacrifice bunt, it has never been in the first inning or the second inning or the third inning. It's been later in games when there's less time to play and a single run might matter more. So his bunt profile is just so intelligent, so high baseball IQ. And that's been something that's been a little troubling about the 2025 Padres is I said they need some bunt sobriety.
You did say bunt sobriety. I noticed that. And I was like, yes, they are absolutely drunk on bunts. You are correct on that assessment.
And then when you take a deeper dive into what the league's been doing with bunts, it is eye-popping. So if you just tier, bunts put into play by right-handed batters since 2020, and if you control for the intent of the batter by looking at bunt attempts with no one on base, so that's obviously not a sacrifice attempt, that's an attempt to hit. If you tier it by the positioning of the third baseman at the start of the play, when there's only been 10 attempts, but when the third baseman's more than 130 feet away from home plate, 8 out of 10 attempts have led to a hit. When they're 120 to 109 feet back, which is well behind the third base back, 114 hits and 188 attempts, a 606 batting average. Even when they're, more neutrally positioned, 110 to 119, 87 out of 178 attempts. That's a 489 batting average. This is clearly an inefficiency. And you can't just, pull that out of your back pocket at any time. You need to recognize the situation. But Freddy Fermin's done this. And there are benefits that accrue from just having that in your game, in that defenses can't just park their third baseman at the edge of the left field grass, which is a huge advantage when facing line drive, pull heavy hitters like one Xander Bogaerts.
Yeah. I love that you lined this up with screenshots of moments in time when Xander Bogaerts probably should have gone through this strategy, but I don't want to disparage Xander. Xander's been really good lately.
He's been really good, even at his nadir when he was in the worst of his slump. He never was not a winning player in the aggregate. He does so many things well, and he's been hitting the ball well all season. He's been making a lot of outs on really well hit balls, and part of the reason I was a bit pessimistic in my outlook is because he was hitting the ball so well early in the season and making outs. And one way to think about it is, it's just luck. But then when you watch where they're positioning him, it's not all luck. They're playing infielders at the very edge of the outfield grass. They're shading him to hit the ball towards center, and he's scalding it in that general vicinity and making a lot of hard outs. So I'm just thinking about what if he had this in his back pocket for when the moment's right.
Yeah, everyone can learn something about watching when and how Freddy Fermin bunts, because it's not just the situation. The bunting itself is beautiful.
It's crisp.
He not only is it crisp, he does the bunt where he's already kind of running, like he's taking his first step towards first base when the ball's making contact with the bat. And I love that. He
does
good.
Everything well. He disguises that he's bunting. He doesn't go into the bunt action until the pitch is being thrown.
Notice that too.
Keeps the bat on plane while he's moving his momentum towards first base. And the contact that he gets on his bunt is a genuine skill that he has. So it was a delight to see that these things that fans were saying, he's such a good bunter, which just doesn't sound worth your time. It was actually very interesting to see that he's a differentiated bunter.
He is, for sure. And you made that argument very well. I'm sorry to do this to you. This is going to be not a hot take. This is a confusing take. And I want you to sort this out for me.
Let's do it.
Explain to me how Freddy Fermin is or is not Austin Nola. Because...
He looks like
Go ahead.
I want to jump into that because he looks like a better hitter than Nola.
Well, okay, so Nola, when Nola was with Seattle, his OPS plus was like, in 2019 it was 114, in 2020 it was 129 over the year, and it was 151 in the 29 games he played with Seattle before he got traded to the Padres. In his first year with the Padres, it was 101. In his second year with the Padres, where he played 110 games, he had an OPS plus of 90 and a WAR of 1.9. That's a good baseball player, right? And if you look at Freddy Fermin, the last 2 years, right now his OPS plus is 81. And his OPS plus last year was 94. His OPS plus the year before that was 110. His WAR is higher. He had a WAR of 3 last year and one of 1.3 this year. I think part of that is like he's just a better the stuff you mentioned about his pop times and being able to handle the run game, I think is playing a part in the WAR here. But they're both kind of smaller guys. Like Fermin is listed as 5'10", 200. Nola was 6 foot, 200. And I sincerely think what happened with Austin Nola with the Padres was he was a good player who got worn down. And as you said, Freddy Fermin has never really gotten the opportunity to be a starting catcher. He did appear in 111 games last year, but he's never really got a chance to be a starting catcher. And when Austin showed up, again, he was good for a year to 2 and then really fell off. And I just a lot of the stuff that's said about him, he's so smart, he's a leader, he can do all these other things that you don't really expect catchers to be able to do. He's got some speed, et cetera, et cetera. It all sounds like Austin Nola to me, outside of the fact that he can control the run game, which Austin Nola always struggled to do.
So when you look at their minor league profiles, I mean, Austin Nola never did anything in the minors that suggested he's going to be a good, legitimately good major league hitter, certainly not a major league hitter with any kind of ability to slug. That definitely matched the eye test. He had unquestionably good numbers when he was in Seattle in 2019, for 250 at-bats. He followed that up, with a good 110 at-bats with Seattle the next year in the shortened 2020 season. The numbers look good. The numbers both of those years look better than anything that he did in the minors.
Yep.
He was I think he was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he was a 27-year-old when he was still going between AA and AAA, putting up like a 641 OPS.
Well, if I remember correctly, the story was when he was in the minors, he was an infielder. And then his brother Aaron Nola needed someone to catch him in the offseason, and Austin offered to catch him, learned how to catch, and was like, maybe this is my path, and also said, that made me understand how pitchers were pitching me, which is what led to my success as a hitter. But he basically said like that transition from infielder to catcher was what changed him as a hitter as well. But yeah, you're dealing with small sample sizes.
Yeah,
I get that.
You want to entertain that, but then you look at his 2019 season, the peripherals were not good. They were not good at all. His hard hit rate was very low. He made good swing decisions, but there was nothing in the batted ball results that implied that the statistics were going to be sticky and not volatile. Now, different story in 2020. On paper, looked very good. Chase rates remained really low, but he was hitting the ball hard. He was hitting in the sweet spot. That was over an extremely small sample size. It's very hard to completely explain, but the theory of the player in Fermin is just different. He has a different pedigree. He was very successful in the minor leagues at a younger age than Nola, and he just seems to be a different type of athlete. He has the catcher tools that you want. He has a better arm. Both of them are decent at blocking the ball, but as a major league hitter, Fermin's approach makes sense. He has an approach that makes sense. He does have some power in his bat. He's the type of hitter who, if he could more consistently get to good launch angles, probably would be, a 15 homer threat at the major league level too. He's already done it half a season in the minors, at a younger age than Nola was languishing. So I think there's differences. You never know these things with certainty, but we actually have faced Fermin a decent amount, and he's gotten big hits off of our best pitchers. He's gotten to Suarez multiple times in high leverage between last year and this year. You never know, but there's a lot more to like on the surface and with the theory of the player in Fermin, who's a more natural true catcher than with Austin Nola. That said, until we see it, we're all going to be having flashbacks from how the Austin Nola trade turned out.
I don't know. I think your initial answer was kind of the right one, which is like the eye test tells you that they're different, and not just the fact that Freddy Fermin like really tags the ball, or the fact that, like you said, he was kind of just held back because he had Salvador Perez ahead of him. But when you look at him, like I remember Phil Nevin when he was playing, I think he was playing third base, and Kevin Kuzminoff was coming up, and Padres needed a catcher, and Nevin was a former catcher, and someone asked him like, "What would you think about going back to catching?" And Nevin was like, "Look, mentally, I probably couldn't do it." He's like, "Physically, I couldn't do it." And they were like, "But you're a baseball player. You play every day." And he was like, "You don't understand that catchers' bodies are just different than everyone else's bodies." And I think what he meant by that is like they need a thicker foundation. Like I don't mean that in like he's thick. Like they literally need like wider hips, bigger thighs, like to handle all the ups and the downs and everything. And just, crouching behind home plate so much. And Austin Nola looked like an infielder who had thrown on catcher's gear. And Freddy Fermin does not. Freddy Fermin looks much more like, that's a catcher.
Stocky. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He might be a little short, but that's a catcher. Mm-hmm. And so, that's to me the thing that why I didn't really make the Austin Nola connection until this morning, where I was like, I should compare the stats. And I was like, if you look at the stats, the major league stats, there's a similar profile here. But everything else tells you, especially the eye test, that these guys are night and day difference. Answer a question for me. And the answer could be he's better. What's the difference between Ryan O'Hearn and this year's version of Gavin Sheets?
It's a good question. The productivity looks similar superficially. O'Hearn is probably a tougher out at this point in both of their careers. He has a slightly lower K rate. He's not quite as susceptible. Both of them take, quite a haircut when facing a lefty. But I think the difference is O'Hearn is just a slightly better swing decision, slightly tougher out. His mechanics are really geared towards getting to that launch. Gavin Sheets has been excellent in terms of getting lots of his hits into the launch angle sweet spot. He's had several hits this season that would have been, deep home runs had they had just a little bit more launch. Similar players. The pedigree with O'Hearn is a little bit more fleshed out. He's kind of been doing what he did this year for a couple of years now, and it seems likely that that's real.
Yeah, that's probably the right answer. I felt bad yesterday as I kept basically just calling Ryan O'Hearn like a slightly better Gavin Sheets, but I think that's what he is. And I don't think there's anything wrong. That's not an insult. That's a compliment. Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having two of those guys. I do feel a little bad for Gavin Sheets. They basically found like a slightly better version of him, and they were like, "Hey, get to the bench or split time and left or anything like that."
I expect to see them in the same lineups. I really do. I think they're going to give Sheets the at bats against righties. They're going to keep Laureano on the bench for pinch hitting duty in those matchups, and they're just going to make it torturous to get through the lineup.
Righties are like 70% of starting pitching, 80% of starting pitching. Like, I don't think you want Laureano sitting for 80% of the games. He won't languish.
Right? He'll be getting. I imagine he'll be getting plenty of play time, but I would be pretty surprised if Sheets was relegated to just pinch hitting duty.
Yeah, I don't think he will be, but again, Mike Shildt's got a lot to go on. All right, so roster crunch, and then I want to talk about Tatis. The roster crunch is they added Quintana's going to the minors. Will Wagner got sent to the minors. Cortez comes over on the IL, so he doesn't count against the active roster. So they're adding 5 guys to the active roster: Mason Miller, JP Sears, Freddy Fermin, Ramon Laureano, Ryan O'Hearn. They're losing one guy who was on the active roster, Ryan Bergert, so they need to free up 4 spots. Martin Maldonado was DFA'd. That means that because he's a veteran, he's going to go somewhere else. He's going to ask for his release, whatever. He's gone. Trenton Brooks down to AAA, DFA'd. I don't know if he has options or whatever, but by Trenton Brooks. My guess on who the other 2 guys are that are going down are Ron Marinaccio. I still don't know how to say his name.
I think that's right.
And probably David Morgan. Those are the 2 bullpen arms that I feel like they can most afford to drop. Now, if I'm looking at the roster after those moves, let's assume they make those moves. You have a bench of Tyler Wade, Jose Iglesias, Bryce Johnson, Elias Diaz, and Gavin Sheets. We have the starting rotation. You have your 5 dominant guys in the pen, and you also have Wandy Peralta, because he's probably not going anywhere, and Yuki Matsui. Mostly, not that Yuki's been bad, but I don't know if you've ever seen the stuff in Yuki's contract that basically says, like, if you try and send him to the minors, someone will show up at your house and kill you.
Yep.
So I think both of those guys stay. We didn't really talk about this. It adds a lot more balance to the team. You know, I talked about getting a lefty into the rotation, and they want that. The bullpen will now be 4 righties, 3 lefties, which it probably was before, but good balanced bullpen. The starting lineup with Laureano and O'Hearn in and Sheets on the bench is 5 righties, 4 lefties. So you can literally do a right, left, all the way down the whole lineup if you want. I don't know if Shildt wants to do that. My guess is yes. And that's I always like that. That's fun. That makes for the late innings a little bit more entertaining. God, we don't have to watch Martin Maldonado get pinch hit with Diaz anymore.
Never
I'm
again.
very, very excited about that. So they have more balance. That's what I assume the roster crunch is going to net. And, you know, these are, we now have good problems. We probably don't need to pay attention to the minor leagues for the rest of the year. We'll rely on Matt Friars to do that, but good problems for the Padres to be in. I want to talk with you about Fernando Tatis Jr., though, because is he the best player on the team? No, that's almost assuredly Manny Machado at this year at this point. But Tatis has the highest ceiling of anyone on this team. I don't think that's
Without
really
a doubt
debatable.
No, it's not.
Remind me, I want to come back and talk about Mason Miller later too. I don't want to lose that. So I have just been digging through the StatCast for Tatis because what I noticed during his, I'm going to call it a slump. And I'm going to tell
Definitely
you why.
was.
But okay. It was a slump, but also Tatis became so good at getting on base, even without the power and even when the hit tool wasn't really working well.
Yes, he did.
That it sometimes I feel a little bit like I'm watching a more athletic Juan Soto these days. And I know Juan Soto, he got his power back, but when he was with the Padres, especially early on with the Padres, he was struggling to hit home runs. And everyone was like, where's the home runs? And it was like, but he's still so valuable because he's getting on base all the time, every game.
Yes.
And that's kind of how I feel about Tatis right now. But I also noticed that when he did swing and he did make contact, the ball was not jumping off his bat like it used to. And I was trying to figure out why. And my 30 minutes spent on his StatCast page tells me that his launch angle had gotten lower than it had been in a while. I think he was averaging somewhere around 8.9, something like that, below 10 for sure. And also his attack angle had gotten pretty bad. But I looked at like the rolling average and you could see like it kind of starts the season and the launch angle and the attack angle are really good. And then they drop off a cliff into a deep, dark valley. And then over the last month, you see it climbing back up and almost getting back to it's back to like league average, maybe above league average for both of these things, for launch angle and for attack angle. And it's still climbing. And I think he's going to get back to that guy he was in the beginning part of the season. And everyone's just going to be like, oh, he got hot and then he had a slump and now he's hot again. But I think there's real things happening with his swing. And we saw in the beginning of the season when he was hot, everyone noticing that he had made changes to his swing that kept him back on the ball, that kept his head from moving, that allowed him to see balls longer. And that was leading to less strikeouts, less wild swings at balls that were dropping into the dirt and stuff like that. And I think he's kept all of that up. I think it's just the attack angle has been off, and he's been trying to figure out how to merge these two things. This new swing, but I need my old attack angle, my old launch angle back so that the ball bounces off my bat and goes flying over the fence in the outfield. I said with Darren that I thought that if you added like 10 feet to every one of Tatis's fly balls over the last month or so, that he's essentially the same player that he was to start the season. I'm going to try and do like a real analysis and see if I'm right or wrong about that. But
it's worth doing.
Right off the bat, you spend, I think, more time in the StatCast pages than I do, and maybe anyone else that I know. Do you think I'm crazy? Am I crazy in thinking that Tatis is like on his way back to that guy he was the first month of the season?
No, that's not crazy to think. There's reasons to think that he hasn't had the ability to be himself for a lot of this season. He's been pretty banged up, specifically with injuries, in the forearms and hands, the machinery that's responsible for getting the head of the bat into the proper, launch position.
Didn't he get hit in the pinky the other day too?
He did.
That's not fun.
And that's what led to us calling for a trade acquisition of some armor.
I forgot about that.
There are players that just armor that part of their body, and it is no big deal when they get hit. But he has a long history of eschewing that, and I'm sure there's a reason.
Pause right there. I think I could probably guess the reason. Do you think that the guys wearing armor are guys that typically get doubles and triples? Because I think he's worried about the armor getting in the way of him running after he hits the ball.
I don't know. I really don't. I find it pretty baffling, to the point where I don't even know what I would guess, because I would be wearing the armor. This would just be one of the simplest decisions I've ever made for myself. But he's a smart guy. He's an incredible, baseball mind in addition to his athletic ability. So there's a reason. I cannot speculate what it is. I think what you just suggested is as likely as any other explanation. But I wonder if for much of this season, he's just mechanically been unable to get into the proper slot to launch. Machado talked about that in the past when he was recovering from off-season surgery, where everything felt normal to him. He was doing what he does to be successful, and the results just weren't there. His body just wasn't getting into that millimeter perfect position to launch. And baseball swings are a really delicate thing. Injury could have some explanatory power. The other thing, though, is we should call it a slump. He's definitely been in one for a large part of the season, but what you pointed out is he's been taking really tough at-bats. So let me just give you two statistics and tell me what your intuition about the change year over year is. So last season, 2024, he missed some time, but he had a walk rate of 7.3% and a K rate of about 22%. What direction do you think those sliders went this season?
I mean, I imagine he's walking more and striking out less.
He is walking a massive amount more. He's up to a 12.7% walk rate, that's where your Juan Soto comp comes in. That is creating a lot of stressful at-bats for the opposition, even though, he hasn't been launching like he usually does. And he cut his strikeout rate to 18% this season. Those are swings that are large enough that it's probably not just noise, even though we're still talking about 2/3 of a season. There's probably something approach-based there. And when you look at his StatCast around the batting stance and where he's making contact with the ball, he's been letting it travel a bit further, which can be a strategy to, avoid striking out, and a strategy to put balls in play, and a strategy to make better swing decisions, because you have that fraction, of a microsecond, which doesn't sound like much, but these guys are aliens, and the way their brains work, that's enough for them to make, a marginally better swing decision here or there. And it's very possible that some of his problems in getting to good launch is a byproduct of that approach, is a trade-off to that approach. So that's to say you can't have one without the other, because the cheat code, so to speak, that people like to say is, just, sell out for power, pull fly balls. That's the way that you get to launch and you get home runs. That's definitely true. It's 100% true when you're taking batting practice. That's how you hit home runs. Get way out in front of it, barrel it. But there are trade-offs when you're trying to do that against major league pitchers that are trying to get you out, and that's typically worse quality of contact interspersed with those moments where you really barrel one and then it's a home run, and a lot more strikeouts. So is it possible that it's a mix of both, some explanatory power from injuries to the extensor compartments of his wrist in particular, compounded by an approach change, one that's deliberate, one that's meant to be more successful against the non-batting practice pitchers, but comes with the trade-off of you let the ball travel a little deeper, you're hitting it sooner in your swing path, and that typically carries a lower launch angle. I don't know how to reconcile those theories.
I mean, I think it's now you got me on his StatCast page looking at like xwOBA but seriously, like his xwOBA on breaking pitches, even though his batting average on breaking pitches is 207, his xwOBA on breaking pitches is over 300. His xwOBA on off-speed pitches is 350. His xwOBA on fastballs, oh wait, no, this is last year, isn't it? Oh, this year it's even higher. Breaking pitches, xwOBA 405. xwOBA on fastballs 397. Like, and you can see the launch angle drop from year to year. Last year it was around 11. This year it's around 8. And my guess is that all the swing changes that happen in the offseason, you know, the most important ones were get deeper into the batting box so the ball can travel more, and, you know, adjust your swing so that your head doesn't move at all, so you get a longer look at the pitch. Because I think late movement might have been the way to get Fernando Tatis Jr. out last year. And
Definitely.
this year, I think he's watching it. He's identifying the late movement, and instead of swinging at it, he's letting that movement take the ball out of the strike zone, and he's taking his walk, understanding that for him, being on base is just as much of a threat as being in the batter's box. And maybe someday the power comes back, the home run swing comes back, and he's even more of a threat in the batter's box than he is now. But right now, when he gets on base, like, that's a problem for opposing pitchers still. So
it is. And just to put it in context, so I would say that this year he went through the worst slump of his entire career. I don't think that's too controversial. It's the worst slump that I can remember him being in, and I've basically watched every game he's played. Despite that diluting everything, he's putting up the highest on-base percentage that he has as a professional since his, COVID-shortened, or his injury-shortened, I should say, rookie season. His on-base percentage is almost 370.
Yeah.
For somebody that has the type of base running acumen that he does, that's providing so much value, putting so much stress on the other team. And that has survived, this, I think it was a whole month that he was hitting under 200 and just was a shell of himself. So it strikes me as approach change is at least part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the approach change being one that's geared more towards being able to hang with the toughest pitchers in the leagues.
Yeah. It's funny, we talk about this being a down year for him. He made the All-Star team, and he's on pace for like 6 WAR.
And I've never seen better outfield defense.
No, and his outfield defense is
in my life.
It's like it's almost perfect. Like, it's almost like a robot couldn't do it any better if you programmed it to play right field. It's amazing. All right, we're almost at an hour. I have 2 questions for you. One of which I'm going to make very, very quick. You have been saying for a while, you said so on this podcast, that you thought that Luis Arráez was still dealing with some sort of injury stuff with his hand or his wrist, and you thought that was leading to his kind of struggles earlier in the year. He's hitting well. He hit a home run the other night. Mm-hmm. Do you think Luis Arráez is healthy now?
I think he's more healthy. So just so I can recap that quickly.
Sure.
He tore through the stabilizing ligament of the pinch grip of his left hand. What that means, so that's a ligament tear. Ligaments are not attached to muscles. You can't make up for that by just tensing, the intact muscle fibers more. Ligaments just attach bones together. When they're torn through, those bones give way. And the pinch grip on your left hand for a left-handed hitter, that's your bat control grip. And when you look at, I think it was June 25th last season when he tore the ulnar collateral ligament of the thumb. All of a sudden, in the second half of that season, his quality of contact cratered. He started doing things he had never done in his entire career, specifically popping the ball up all the time. And he had okay numbers at the end of the year. He won a batting title, but that small sample size batted ball luck definitely influences those things. And when he started this year, he was not Luis Arráez. He was not striking out. He had fantastic contact rates, but the quality of contact was much worse than at any point in his career. Exit velocity was way down, and one measure of his success, because he's such a unicorn, he was the best hitter in baseball in consistency of line drive quality for basically his whole career. And at the time that we ran, his launch angle standard deviation and exit velocity standard deviation, he was something like 30th in baseball, which is a profound drop-off for that hitter. So I think that we looked up the surgery that he had. It typically portends a 6-month recovery to get, back to fine motor skill. But that's talking about a normal person's fine motor skill, which is, can you use a fork and get some of the food into your mouth? Yes, then your fine motor skill is back. That is not the same as 3-time batting champion Luis Arráez having his fine motor skill back. So yeah, I think he was injured. And you saw him every time he made contact, shaking that left hand because it was clearly still painful. He has looked much better recently. You've seen the return of line drives, and you haven't seen those flimsy pop-ups to left field all the time. I think something has been gradually changing with him, and he's becoming more of the hitter of old. But the first month of the season was completely uncharacteristic for Arráez. At any point in his career, he had never been that bad. And that's, maybe it's luck. Luck can explain anything. It just doesn't seem that likely.
I like that you are one of these people that'll play around with me in terms of BABIP and not just be like, it's luck. I hate the people who say BABIP is just luck. BABIP is also an indicator of the quality of the hit, right?
It is.
And for the season, his BABIP is 291, which is below average, right? In the last 14 days, Luis Arráez has played in 13 games. His slash line is 404, 446, 519 for an OPS of 966.
Mm-hmm.
Want to guess what his BABIP was during the last 14 days?
What is it?
It's 400.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's back. I don't know if that means he's back forever, but I think he's back. I think he's feeling pretty healthy, and I feel like his back control is back. Last question, unless you really want to add something on Ramon Laureano, which I'll let you do if you want to. But last question from me is about Mason Miller. They gave up Leo DeVries and some other things to get JP Sears, who's meh, and Mason Miller, who is he's kind of the star of the Padres trade deadline acquisitions, right? He throws 104.
Definitely.
He's under control for 3.5 more years. The team has already come out and said Robert Suarez is the closer. So Mason Miller will be in the mix with the other 3 guys as setup, firemen, middle relief, whatever. It's going to be a dominant bullpen. It's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Suarez is probably leaving after this year. Adrian Morejon's got 1 more year before he hits free agency. I don't know. I think Adam is the same. I don't know what Estrada's deal is. A lot of people looked at this.
Several years of control.
For Estrada, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people looked at this and said, oh, not only does he help the bullpen and the championship odds this year, he's going to take over as the team's closer next year. Sure, that happens. Fine. Easy peasy. I like the other conversation about the A's never really let him try out as a starting pitcher. He pitched in the minors as a starter. I think he pitched in college as a starter. And it seems like something he's interested in doing. And I was talking last week about, maybe you let Morejon try out as a starting pitcher again. Like, this is a very a player-friendly team that's like, hey, if you're a relief pitcher and you want to give it a shot as a starter, come to San Diego. We're kind of okay with that. I Morahone, that might be the trainers who go like, nah, buddy, that time is over. But with Miller, I think there's a real opportunity here. Have you looked into him at all through the lens of potential starter? And if so, do you have thoughts?
Well, what I came across early is that he had made comments to the effect of, should he be asked to be stretched out as a starter, he would want some financial certainty, which is a totally reasonable request. And that he did run into some injury concern when he was trying to stretch out as a starter. What I want to raise, it's kind of throwing it back at you, but I just want to raise it. I genuinely want other opinions, is the conventional wisdom about why a starter is more valuable is because they pitch more innings.
Yes.
But what I want to ask is, are we doing the right calculus there? Are all innings created equal? Is 5 amazing innings from your starter, is that definitely worth more than 2 innings or even 1 dominant inning that you get to choose when it happens?
I think so. I think
the intuition is yes, but let me put this to you. There are certain games in which no matter how dominant a pitcher is, they basically can't affect the win probability. If you're up by 10 or down by 10, you can have an immaculate inning and you've barely changed your team's fortunes.
Right.
Essentially haven't changed it at all.
That's kind of the argument here of like, if Mason Miller's coming in the 9th, but you're always down by 4 runs, who cares, right?
But the save doesn't always happen in the 9th.
That's true.
And what I've wondered for a long time is for these particular players where you're considering the trade-off of stretching him out for a starter, where he'll pitch more innings. He may be less effective in those innings, but you'll get more of them. They'll still be pretty good. It'll come with a little more injury risk versus keeping him in a relief role where he can go 2 innings. He had 11 appearances last year where it was at least 5 outs that he recorded. But you get to choose when those innings are. And you will always choose to avoid using him when it's going to be a wasteful outing. And, 5 shutty when your team puts up 12 runs, that's actually very wasteful. That was a wasted outing. So that's what I wonder is, even if he could, is that definitely providing more value than keeping him as a one-man fire brigade that can give a little bit of length? He can shut down the fire and then he can give you the next inning too, and just bridge the gap to the end of the game, and you choose which games your run prevention is going to be the best in Major League Baseball. That's a hard question to answer, but that's what I've been wrestling with Mason Miller in particular.
Yeah, and I feel like I got led astray here because someone on social media yesterday was saying Mason Miller was one of these guys because he throws so hard that doesn't like to pitch in back-to-back days or back-to-back games. Looking at his game log, well, he does it a fair amount. Seems like every couple of weeks he's got back-to-back games in which he's throwing, 20 pitches here, 15 pitches there, 15 pitches here. Here's one.
Yeah. He's definitely someone you don't want to ride too hard, but I mean, you ask him to do it, he's up for it. He's a bulldog.
I mean, I think my answer to the question of should the Padres consider converting him to a starter is twofold. One, it depends on what the starting rotation looks like heading into next year. Is Darvish around? Does he look good? Does he look healthy? Did King resign? How does Vasquez look? Is Musgrove 100%, right? Like, if you have a lot of gaps in the starting rotation, there's a lot more argument for it. So that's point number one. Point number two is I've always looked at Jacob deGrom and been like, of course he can't stay healthy. He's trying to throw 102 miles an hour for 6 innings. So my question is, if Mason Miller starts, is he trying to throw 104 as a starter, or does he become a very effective pitcher who's got like a 3 or 4 pitch mix and his fastball's 99?
He's probably sitting 99 with a nasty slider. And John, does that remind you of any of the other Padres pitchers?
If you are about to compare him to Dylan Cease, I should probably end the podcast anyway.
I don't even think I need to make the comparison. It's we won't go there, but yeah, I think you're right. He's not going to be throwing 104 when he's in a starter's role, and that means he's going to be a little bit less effective. And you're going to get a trade-off of more innings, and there's value to that. Certainly, you're probably taking on some more injury risk, even if he's dialed back the velocity a little bit. Those are probably inescapable trade-offs. So the thing that I'm going to make a weird parallel here, but getting Mason Miller at the stage of his career that he's in, with the contract control that comes along with, provides the Padres the ability to preserve value and then use information that they can't get until next year to make decisions about how to best to field a team. And that was one of the value propositions for trading for Juan Soto. Is it's not just your typical star coming available. It's a star in his prime with 2.5 years of control, and time provides information, and information is so valuable. So what you got with Juan Soto is you got to get a bite at the apple 1 year, a bite at the apple next year. And then if you needed to overhaul some part of your team because you've had attrition somewhere, you got to put him back in the trade market and get exactly what you needed back. And that was actualized. That's actually why the 2025 Padres are still standing.
Yeah.
You have some of that with Mason Miller. You actually are trading for present value with him, but you're getting future value as well. And you're getting the ability to use the information that won't become available until 2026 to decide how best to outfit the team then. So tantalizing trade, and so many directions that they can go with him.
Yeah, I think I hopefully said this yesterday, but that is a flexibility trade. That gives them so much flexibility. Like I said, you can change how you want to use or think about Mason Miller based on, do you need help in the bullpen, or do you need help in the starting rotation? Or do you need help at, I was trying to use an example like Luis Arráez leaves and you need a first baseman, but I guess you would have, well, no, because Ryan O'Hearn is a free agent as well.
But that's the thing, is it's Mason Miller under contract.
Right.
You can get whatever you want.
You can either make him your closer, you can make him your fireman, you can make him a starting pitcher, or you can turn him into almost anything else that you need. So
exactly right.
That's why I'm totally okay with that trade. I'm totally okay with every other trade. I already was optimistic about the Padres. I already called playoffs. I'm getting close. I'm getting close to wanting to call NL West, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to knock on wood again. I'm not going to do that yet. But I like all the options and backup plans and flexibility that this team has for this year and this offseason.
Yes, and this trade deadline was a statement about the front office believing in the reproducibility of their results. They scouted and signed Leo DeVries 2 years ago for $6 million signing bonus. 2 years later, he's the key piece in trading for a pitcher that most of the league presumed is just simply not available.
Yeah.
The draft strategy that they have followed has had very clear differentiation from most of the rest of the league. The Padres are elite in scouting tools, and they get tooled up players every year. And when those players start to show some baseball acumen in the minors, their value accrues rapidly. They're stating that they think they can do this again because, boy, did they send out a haul of prospects this deadline.
I'm just going to say, as an older man who lived through the steroid era, please do not refer to the Padres players as being tooled up. That is a term that I heard way too many times to describe men who were cheating at baseball. This is not what the Padres are doing, but Indeed. I know what you're saying. All right. Thank you as always. This is lovely. I'm sure I'll have you back. Darren will have you back.
Definitely.
We'll both have you back. Dylan, everyone go subscribe to his Substack. Letters to AJ. You can find him on X. You can find him on Blue Sky. I believe he is Letters to AJ in both places.
Yep.
Always one of the smartest people covering and talking about the San Diego Padres. So thank you for some of your time today, sir.
Anytime.